smash that facade.
Welcome to the future. Shit where you please. The Wi-Fi's killer, but there's no more bees. So there's hardly any flowers, there are very few trees, and you'll pay $1,000 for some honey for your tea. But we got these awesome collars, mine's an Apple Model 3. It allows for better movement than the Tesla X Elite. It lets you customize the ads that it implants in every dream. And for premium subscribers, doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They could stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show, stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple hiles. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. Which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
See, I like to think my trial's gonna play like a recital. I'll denounce the world around me and accuse the most entitled, who weaponize their titles, whose pull is something title, who'd starve us all to death to best delight their blinded idol. So they might destroy the record, and I will never get to vinyl. So my word is not immortal, but it's final.
It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
to set you free, but I really want to let you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. When I know too well it's open season, I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. Now what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks I'm anywhere else, if I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul. This world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth, then demand 1,000-fold. I tried to block the light just so I could keep you close. Land of the free, and you'll know us by the trail of dead. It's just one more world war to complete the set. When you live by the pike, you die by the pith. You die wide-eyed, still pleading the fifth, or crying divine epithets and pathetic attempts at defense. All empathetic for those on your side of the fence. Well, I'll gladly put you and your legacy into an alternate tense of faltering senses and altered events. Like hun, it ain't a hearse, it's a reaper's stretch. Ah, how sweet, she said. Bunch of hordes in the street like it's Evil Dead. Where the thin blue line meets razor's edge. And where the corporate ladder ascends to a steel-toed boot that awaits on the ledge. You'll be licking it fresh at your boss's request till it stomps each finger and watches you fall to your death. And drown in an ocean of debt. Gone with the fodder who gathered to honor the patient left, who purity tested themselves into sections, step by step, till the next election, when it's just one them and the sound of their well-read theorized breath. That's harm reduction for the lowly cost of you holding your nose and just openly buying the theft. Maybe that's all in the flick of the pen. Maybe we're all one unmarked van from a trip to the pen, being guarded by pigs who exist on a diet of dying breaths of much worthier men. Honey, heaven's expecting you. Just don't get too hung up on who they let in. Just look up at the shine of the pearly gates. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the paint. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the water, lead in the milk, lead in the honey, lead in the caustic embrace of the Heavenly Father. Lead is the flavor of passive perpetual slaughter. Lead is the taste of us led to the ledge by the lure of the legend of expert consensus, and then beckon to stretch it just one step farther. And I hope all the folks who were boastfully gloating and toasting themselves as the heroes of COVID for boosting their boosters and doing their part are now equally thrilled to be starstruck martyrs, all laid in a government grave with anonymous markers, like you're back from the carvers and off to the splicer. You're the very first wave to be slain in the war against Pfizer, that 100 years war against Pfizer. They are thinning the crowd that is striking right now to bleed adequate pay from those inhuman misers, who all sit in their office and designate coffins to people regarded as nothing but profit for Kaiser. Still the Dems want you nicer. Dems want you softer. Dems want you kinder. Yeah, they all want you graciously starving in silence. You will speak when you're spoken to. Rest of the time, you and all of us peasants are merely depressing statistics neglected in Congress's binders. All bled, bone dry, then fed to the grinder. Our headstones line each step as reminders. That's a lesson in object permanence learned in the furnace by workers consigned to the fire. Workers bled, bone dry, then fed by the fed to the grinder. Fed by the fed to the grinder. Now the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, and you'll see that it's fed. Never you'll mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Now the Fed went straight.
Have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good?
And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously,
No.
we're fucked. We are
Right.
fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
IDN News.
What's up, everybody? There's another episode of IDN News. Another week. We're back. It is
Episode 84. Right?
Yep. Wednesday. As always. Tons of stuff happening, as always, in the world.
Well, in one particular area. We're focusing on one particular area in the world, but there's Sure as hell some
we do know there is
misery.
other stuff. It's just not being shown a lot right now. So we're working with what we got. So anyway, anything else before we get to stories?
Just the usual stuff to our 10, I guess 10 now who are in the chat. Thank you for being here. We know you could be other places, but you chose to be here. And I'm sure a lot of you will probably watch the replay after we're done. So those of you who will watch after we're live, thank you. But yeah, you guys know the things like, comment, share, subscribe. I hate saying that every week. Like, also, I guess now YouTube, whenever you say subscribe, like our subscribe bell kind of lights up or something.
Something like that.
So yeah,
also,
let us know if that happens.
all you got to do,
'cause
even if you don't want to subscribe, just watch one more video. It's the same. Does the same thing for us. Just watch one more video on the channel after you're done with this, and it is literally the same as subscribing to YouTube. Yeah. So just do that, you know. So
but yeah, well, as you guys know, we are demonetized temporarily. Hopefully it's temporary off on YouTube. The best way, if you, again, this is the holiday season, we know you guys are buying gifts and all that, and well, Thanksgiving is next week, so a lot of you are buying food for your feasting or whatever. But if you do choose to give, and as we say every week, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, take care of your neighborhoods, damn it, take care of the world. Like, there's better things to take care of the world financially than, you know, us necessarily, but you know, those of you who want to be so inclined, best way, easiest way, and the most beneficial way to give to us, at least right now, is Cash App. Basically, they don't take anything out, so we get all of your funding directly. Rockfin and Rumble, those of you who watch us there, shout out to you guys. You can also give there. Probably the best way, especially in due to having us have consistent revenue, but then like we're working on trying to get some extra perks for you guys, would be through Substack and Patreon, if those of you are so inclined to give a monthly membership or however long you want to do it.
Right.
You could do that through them. And then also just a quick shout out to all of our supporters. We love you guys, and we really appreciate you guys this year. I know it's been a tough year for many of you, but the idea that you guys are willing to give to us, the little channel anyway, is more than appreciated, and we love you, and thank you guys.
Yeah.
So,
anything else?
So I guess.
So.
But how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm medicated to the gills enough to get through another episode.
What do you mean medicated? You're still taking
like Claritin and stuff. It's starting to a lot less than I was. So we are getting.
I think you need to go to the doctor to get that checked out. You've been having this for a while.
Yeah, a week pretty much. Like it literally started like day before our show last time. So,
right.
Whatever. You know, it's just like some nasal nonsense, mainly. So, but we're getting there.
If you know of any home remedies that Reef can take.
Yep.
In terms of, it sounds like a sinus issue, so still for you. But you might want to have that checked out just in case that may be something
like
underlying.
In case I have a deviated septum somewhere.
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't either.
Has it really been hot by you, especially right now?
It's getting colder. It's like in the 60s, like today, 50s. It's starting to get there. So, I don't know. You know, I got one of those bugs my mother brought home. Who knows? But anyway, stories. You brought
Stories.
some.
So, well, I bought some. This first one is brought to us from friend of mine, I guess I could say now, and friend of the show, friend of the network. We've talked about this guy before, but he started a podcast. This is Nuno Marques. He's based in Europe. Guys, go follow him on Twitter. We'll give all his links later. But he actually started a podcast which he calls Manufacturing Dissent. And he talks about the IDF. So want to give you a little snippet of his podcast and then kind of supplement that with some we've talked about the IDF quite a bit, and you probably have heard the IDF quite a lot in mainstream media and Twitter as of now. So we're going to go into the IDF in terms of another journalist who traveled to the West Bank and had some issues with them, and then just some former soldiers who talked about their experiences and what they're trying to do post their tenure in the IDF. And then Nuno actually has some things that he wants to share regarding the IDF and his personal experiences in connecting with former soldiers. So that's going to be our first story. And then you probably saw this over the weekend. So there was a New Yorker article that kind of blew up regarding this woman on the right. Her name is Danielle Weiss. She is a former mayor of, I forgot the name of the city right now, but she was a former situated in the West Bank. She is a self-proclaimed Zionist and a leader of the settler movement, #colonizer movement. It's funny, just interesting how they call themselves settlers.
Same difference.
Same
difference.
I like calling them colonizer. That's what you are.
Yeah.
You are a colonizer.
Settler would be no one would be there beforehand.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But so there was a New York article that was crazy, that went nuts over the weekend. So we're gonna look into that and how that relates to James Baldwin, who is right next to her on the left. And talk about the hypocrisies of liberation in terms of what they both share.
Not the hypocrisies. No.
And what do you got, Reef?
Here, let's go up here. We're all Spartacus. Gonna talk about David McBride. Stuff's been happening around that. If you don't know him, I'll teach you about him. He's important. So nothing like jailing journalists for doing journalistic practice. So we'll get to that. And Israel has a secret plan. They have a secret evil plan, and we're going to talk about what Dr. Evil is up to. So stay tuned for what BB has in store. Turns out they've been planning this for a minute. Turns out. But yeah, we'll get to it. So that's our stories.
All right. So should we get into the first one?
Yeah. Let's see if this works now. It did work. Cool.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
Look at that.
Oh, you got the soundboard
doing stuff.
working.
Yep.
All right.
So
we good?
Yeah.
All right. So for first story tonight, we're going to look at the IDF a little bit. So shout out to Nuno for essentially giving me permission to share his podcast, or at least so many of you might know him or seen him on Twitter. Please go follow him. I'll put his Twitter in the chat later, and then his link to his podcast is actually on is in the description. As I said earlier, we're going to play a little bit of it in him talking about, he actually talked to former IDF soldiers on his travels, so we are going to listen to him share about that.
Gotcha.
And he actually goes into detail regarding the IDF, so definitely listen to his podcast. But I actually wanted to supplement that with this, I guess you can call it a documentary from Dina Jacouri. She's an American journalist. She works with AG Plus.
Okay.
And I think she did this back in 2020, I believe.
Right.
But she's Palestinian, and her family, they're now based in California now. But just due to, the Israeli occupation overtaking the West Bank, which is where the family has been based for generations, her father has not been back to Hebron since he moved.
Gotcha.
So she actually went to record what Hebron looks like now. As the settler community there is basically overtaking, Hebron to, obviously just to the detriment of the Palestinian community that has been living there.
Yep.
We're not going to show the whole thing. I'm going to pull a few clips from the documentary. It's actually well worth a watch.
It's
I
like
think
30
just to
minutes,
kind of
it seems.
I think the whole thing is about 30 minutes. So I think I'm going to play like 3 or 4 clips from this.
Cool.
And I think it's actually well worthwhile to watch the whole thing in full. But so basically this first clip is where she is traveling into Hebron. And she has all her papers and everything, and then she comes into contact with the IDF.
Papers, please, essentially.
Yeah, essentially. So
we should play Papers, Please on stream one of these days. I think you would find it interesting. It's a video game. It's essentially like you play as the person who asks for the papers in a fictional fascist state. Very interesting stuff. Not easy either. But anyway.
Right. So Dina's getting her contact, and she gets bombarded by the IDF. So let's watch.
Go through. Because I'm Palestinian, I'm not allowed to enter parts of the old city. So I'm meeting former Israeli soldiers who I hope will help me access my family's hometown.
Hi, how are you, Ori? Nice to meet you, I'm Dina.
Ori and Joel are with the Israeli anti-occupation group Breaking the Silence. They used to serve in the Israeli army, but now they give tours of Hebron to expose the reality of how Israel treats Palestinians.
Come here.
But before they could even start showing me around, this happened.
היא אזרחית ארצות הברית ועיתונאית, כן? רק שתדעו. היא אזרחית ארצות הברית ועיתונאית.
אין שום בעיה, הוא צילם עמדה ביטחונית, הוא צריך למחוק את הסרטונים האלה.
אני לא צילמתי את העמדה, צילמתי רק אותך.
לא, צילמת את עמדה. זה לא משנה, אם היא עמדה ליד העמדה, אתה מוחק...
דבר ראשון, אתה מפריע לנו בעבודה, בוא תעמוד שם עם המצלמה. דבר ראשון.
עכשיו דוחף אותי.
יופי, דוחף אותו, כרגע הוא מפריע לי בעבודה.
My Palestinian film crew, who have the proper credentials, are sadly used to experiencing this kind of nationalistic harassment and taunting.
So I've been in the old city for about 5 minutes and we were already stopped by... We literally just got here and a bunch of soldiers stopped us, started yelling at us, started harassing my cameraman. They just asked to see our IDs. I showed my US passport. To all of a sudden have like 6 or 7 armed Israeli soldiers just swarm you. It's honestly really upsetting that this is how you get welcomed to your own home city.
The former soldiers I'm spending the day with say this is a typical scene.
When you consider the fact that they grew up in Israeli society, they have education and media and the political system, all of those elements are telling them that Arabs are scary, Palestinians are bad. And then they get an opportunity when they're in the army, they have power in their hands, and it's not surprising that they use it.
Finally, the soldiers give us back our IDs.
Let's continue, right? It's a very classic demonstration of one of the elements of the occupation, which is complete arbitrariness, right? And every soldier in the occupied territories has the authority on his own decision to detain anyone for 3 hours. Yeah. So we were not delayed here for 3 hours, and we are going to continue our tour, obviously. But it's an example.
Yeah. So she's Palestinian descent, and yeah, that's what happened to her immediately when she enters her family's hometown. You want to say something? Like you're mute, Reef, I think.
No, I'm good. I mean, it's just, you know, we've seen these time after time with this particular area of the world, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, if you watched any of the documentaries, you know, I forget the name of it and exactly how many cameras. I think it's like 7 cameras is the name of the documentary, something like that. You know, this one, there's a load of them that people should be going to go watch. I'm sure people will put them in the chat. Like, there's like 3 or 4 that are like kind of well known for showing exactly that, you know? So, yeah.
Right.
We got.
So let's continue. So this next clip, again, this is same video. So Dina heads into a home where she has an interview with a child regarding, you know, what's happening in her hometown, and she actually got arrested. She's 13. She got arrested by the IDF at some point before this interview. So yeah, let's watch this clip.
Yep.
This is kind of a common sight here in the old city. There's a Palestinian family that lives at the end of this alleyway. Above them is an Israeli settlement, and because the settlers throw garbage down at them, they have to put these nets here to protect them.
This is where I was when they arrested me. You were right here. I was right here when they arrested me. I was exactly
the family
here.
At the end of the alley is the Sidrs. Just a few weeks before I arrived to Hebron, nearby settlers accused their 13-year-old daughter Selwa of picking a knife up off the ground.
Picking up a knife. If she won't tell me, hold on. If she won't tell me where this
knife is, I'm taking her now.
Last chance. Check my pockets. I don't have a knife.
She says she doesn't have a knife. Lie, you have the knife. Too bad she won't say where it is. For all this, I take her now. She'll be with me. Come on, bring me a zip tie. Bring me a zip tie. They arrested me and took me away and interrogated me. They kept me for an hour before letting me go. It took me for a long time. Are you scared they'll arrest you again? I feel like they're going to arrest me while I'm sleeping in the middle of the night.
So we're standing here and I'm talking to her in front of her home, and every time we hear a noise she looks up, and I asked her, are you afraid the settlers are throwing something down at you? And she said, yeah, لأنه بصير كتير إنه بيرموا عليكم.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Are you afraid the settlers are throwing something down at you? And she said, yeah, لأنه بصير.
Because it happens a lot where they throw things down.
كتير إنه بيرموا عليكم.
يعني إذا شفناهم بيلعبوا. If we see them playing, they throw rocks at us. And we sit here and watch them play. The settler kids? Yes, the settler kids. My little brother told me, wow, look how nice their toys are, how they play. Let's go play with them. I told them, how would we do that? This is an occupation.
كمان إحنا ما بنقدرش يعني ننزل بالمرة
We're stuck
باليوم
at home
24
24/7. It's like a prison.
ساعة في الدار يعني زي باعتبار السجن.
Just talking to her, it's really, you don't feel safe at all. Like, it's not a life that people should or can accept.
Yep. I mean, standard occupation stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like kids behind chicken wire, and I mean, they haven't given them a nice striped uniform to wear, but close enough. So like they're not going to get that pajama movie that the other ones got, So no striped pajamas.
I think it's kind of, I think I just found, like, when we were doing some research for, and because I was thinking about doing this for the last few days, and then I stumbled upon this, and I think the reality of this situation, this is in the West Bank, this isn't Gaza. So obviously Gaza is a lot more dramatic right now with the bombing and all that, but that's not to say, everything in the West Bank is a little bit more subdued, but it's still the same shit that's happening there too.
I mean, this is a place with, AI facial recognition robots attached to like 50 caliber machine guns on fences for children. Like,
right.
What kind of dystopian nightmare prison is that? So
right.
Like,
and this is a child, a 13-year-old, who is aware of her reality, and she's basically like, I live in a prison, and I know of no other life but this. And so I think this was kind of powerful. Just, we don't hear from Palestinians, I think, a lot, and I know we've been trying to have more Palestinian voices to kind of share more of their stories, because we really don't hear it at all in mainstream media at all. Maybe like every once in a while, maybe if we're lucky, like in the context of a Westerner who's been there, but very rarely do we hear from Palestinians directly.
Yeah.
So
especially right now.
Right. So I think this is kind of important to kind of show this, to kind of hear what they were saying. Even, I think, again, this was done 3 years ago. That even prior to this conflict in Gaza, that this has been an ongoing issue that has more or less been silent, in terms of the media. So this next, so I have 2 more clips after this. So this one, Dina is talking to the tour guide, and she's basically asking him, what happened. Again, this is Hebron, her family's hometown. So she basically was, because Hebron didn't used to be this way. At least when her father was growing up in this town, it wasn't like this. So
it wasn't occupied.
Right.
Like,
so what happened? So this is what she's asking
this gentleman,
the tour guide, that she is with. And again, he is a former IDF soldier.
IDF. Okay.
So why do you give these tours?
It's extremely important to show people what the occupation looks like, because this word is very vague for most people, right? Occupation. And when you see here, when you walk on those segregated streets, you cannot ignore the reality. And I believe that it's my responsibility as someone who took part in it. The minimum that I can do is to try and show people what I was sent to do. I believe that any decent human being who will see this will want this to end.
Yeah. So he just basically gave a description of why he gives tours. And, and just giving people the reality of what their lives are like, and I think, shout out to Ori, for displaying that kind of courage to actually admit, I was complicit in this, I was a part of this, but I saw the damage that I was doing, and I wanted to stop, and I want to make sure that I am helping others know the reality too, by showing you,
Yeah.
and I think that's the issue. And I think we've talked to Indy, who is Jewish and has gone on these tours, or he's known people who've gone on these tours that, when they go into like the Israeli parts, they don't see this or they don't talk about this. So the idea that we're able to kind of see it and, but to kind of you have this be exposed that this is the other side in terms of the occupation in Palestine, I think it's good. But again, we don't see this at all. All right. So the last one. So Dina actually calls her dad because she was looking for their family home, but it's in settler territory. So she's not, I think she was able to go. But she was showing her dad because, as she says in this, her father has not been back since it was occupied. He might have been back 3 times total. So she gives him a call from Hebron. He lives in California, to kind of show him and just see, do you know where you are? Do you remember all? He was kind of sharing this with her. So right now we're going to see a little bit of the phone call, and then he talked to Ori, her tour guide, as well. So you can go ahead.
My dad wanted to talk to Ori.
Hello, my friend.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I'm glad you are for peace. When counting on people like you to expose the lie.
I really hope you can be here and visit your childhood home at some point. Really, really hope.
You know what I do? I just keep looking at the pictures over and over again. I am physically in San Francisco, but spiritually and emotionally always in Hebron.
I'm curious, how did you feel watching me talk to my dad and then speaking to him yourself?
Like sad, responsible, that this is what the place that I grew up in, that I was so proud of when I was a child. This is what we're actually doing to people. And it feels horrible to feel that.
What most haunts you and your conscience about what you did in your time as a soldier?
For me, it's the routine way we control the Palestinians, right? A Palestinian can wake up in the morning and not know if he will be at work on time, go to sleep, not know if soldiers will invade his home. We basically control the most simple and basic elements of life.
It's designed to break down the population of Palestinians and show them who's in charge and humiliate them on a daily basis.
Exactly. How can we make 2.5 million Palestinians in the West Bank to feel that they cannot lift their head up? We will make them understand that we control their lives. The segregated roads and the settlements and so forth, they exist all around the occupied territories. Military activity, home invasions, patrols, digital surveillance, they exist here and they exist all over the West Bank. The difference in Hebron is that in a very short walk, we can see examples of all of it.
All of it.
All of it.
We saw all of it.
Yeah. I think I said this to you maybe yesterday. This is like the Palestinian version of Jim Crow.
Except that's been happening. Now it's even worse than that.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. Yeah, but maybe now worse.
Much worse.
Much worse. But I mean, just what Ori was saying.
Yeah.
Like how familiar does that sound to hear in dealing with the police here?
Well,
like
they kind of get their playbook from these guys. So
right, exactly.
And I noticed that these are ex-IDF people. I mean, their PTSD must be real. Must make them hard to do campaigns or something like that. But
right. Well,
they're out here, like literally going, "This is how it works. This is what we do. We shouldn't do what we're doing."
Right.
And I'm sure they're risking all sorts of career and life and like to do that, you know?
Mhm.
So, I mean, good for them. I hope they're still around. I hate to be that cynical, but, you know, like, IDF got plenty of bullets in that video, so, you know, I'm just saying, you know,
Right.
those fucking, those Tavors know what they're doing.
So we listened to these IDF soldiers, and they, you know, they're atoning
yes,
for their actions in terms of, you know, the things that they did while under that regime. So, so what we're gonna do now is, again, this is our friend Nuno Marques. He just started. This is his podcast that he produced on Bugle, which I believe is subsidiary of Substack, I believe,
okay,
in Europe. That's where he's from. He's
Gotcha.
based in Portugal, but he's
Portugal.
French he's French of Arab descent. His family is originally from Syria and
Yep.
Egypt, if I remember correctly from what he told me.
Yep.
But he wanted, and he's been very active on Twitter in terms of sharing and kind of communicating. He does know people in Palestine that he's in direct contact with, or trying
Gotcha.
to be in direct contact with, in terms of what's happening. So he's been very prolific on Twitter, just sharing a lot of stuff regarding to, you know, what's happening over there, and then, you know, just tweeting out a lot of the stuff, you know, that we kind of talk about in independent media here. So, as I said, his the link to his podcast is in the description. We're not going to play the whole thing because it's about 25 minutes.
Right.
But I did want to play a little part of what he was saying in terms of the IDF and the experience that he had. So kind of counter to what we heard from Ori, his experience when he connected with former IDF soldiers traveling, that he met up with these guys. So we'll have Nuno kind of share that, and then we'll talk about it.
Fast forward to today. We watch every day as IDF commits atrocities after atrocities, war crimes after war crimes, bombing hospitals, bombing schools, dancing on TikTok videos after they've drone bombed a UN school, making videos mocking dead Palestinians. I've always wondered, right from a very young age, as to what drives this bloodlust that IDF soldiers have. Right? They're killing children, they're killing women, they're assaulting women. What drives them to, yeah, most of them are conscripts. You are forced to join the military. I mean, imagine, you survive the Holocaust. I mean, a tragedy of epic levels in Europe due to European anti-Semitism. Then you come to Israel looking for a safe haven for Jews. And then you're forced to basically ethnically cleanse another population. What drives the mentality? What drives that insatiable need for bloodlust? I've always wondered about that. So, back in 2017, I was traveling across northern India, and I was visiting this town, very famous for international travelers, called Kasol. Kasol is very famous for marijuana and opium, so a lot of international travelers are like attracted to the place. And people are generally there to party for bonfire camps and bonfire parties. So I was there too at one such party and camp. And I saw these three guys who were just like sitting all by themselves, whereas the others were just like having fun. I walk up to them and I sit next to them and I ask them, hey, where are you from? And the three of them say they're from Israel. But from their accents, you could tell they're not Israeli. I mean, they're not from the region, if you know what I mean. Two of them were French, and one was American. And then they, upon asking, they told me they were like second generation. So their parents migrated from France and America respectively, and they came to Israel on birthright citizenship. And now these are the kids. Second generation. Then they later on revealed that all three of them were in IDF, and all three of them had recently quit IDF. I began talking to one of the French guys, French-Israeli guys. So I was asking him, I was just like talking to him, and he told me that he quit because he couldn't really take it mentally anymore. And every time he looked at me to talk to me, I could see his dead eyes, cold, dead eyes. There was no emotion. It was just blank. And upon further talking, he revealed that during 2014 Operation Protective Edge, he had killed 3 children. He shot them dead. The way he was talking, I happened to ask him, hey, you know, it's been 3 years. You were in the military, now you're not. How do you feel about that? He looked at me dead in my eyes and said, I had to kill them. I had no other option. They would have killed me otherwise. And I was appalled and shocked. I asked him, what do you mean you had to kill them? Did they have like knives, guns, what? He said no, they didn't have any knives or guns. They were just like 6 or 7-year-old children returning from school. But he had to kill them. He said, if I wouldn't kill them, they would have killed me. I said, but they had no weapons. How can they kill you? Like, no, they would have killed me. He was convinced. He looked me right in the eye and told me they would have killed him. 6-year-old children would have killed him without any weapons, nothing. I'm sure a lot of you people would have seen similar instances captured on video. I remember this very famous video from a Quds network. There's this 12-year-old schoolgirl in a hijab. She's walking towards her school with a backpack, and these IDF soldiers stop her. When she tries to walk away, they stop her again, and one of them kicks her in the chest. When she falls down, she still tries to reach for her bag, and the other IDF soldier just shoots her dead. In their testimony, these soldiers said, in their testimony to the press, actually, they told the press that, oh, you know, they thought that she had a knife. She was reaching for a knife from her backpack. But when Hayat's investigated, she had no weapons in her backpack. She just had books. So again, what warped indoctrination takes place to turn young people, young settlers, into these zombies that indiscriminately want to kill all Arabs? Like, what turns them into these zombies that think 6-year-old kids, 12-year-old kids are going to kill them in all their body armor and, you know, all their protective gear? So last year,
well, couple of things here, Bear. That is called the amygdala hijack, by the way. See, luckily, when you've been around jiu-jitsu long enough, Care Bear, like I have, you end up meeting Brazilians and in turn Israelis. Would you like to know why? Brazilian part's easy. It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? The Israelis is because they learn that shit. Okay? Particularly members of the IDF, right? Then they train that to cops, right? So there's certain terminology to all this. Like they even know how this works. Okay? This is your flight or flight response getting fucked up. Okay?
Right.
We train American police forces to
The same way. It's
I'm gonna go a layer deeper.
Go ahead.
There's a famous talk by a British military person when he talked about the difference between British military training and American military training. Granted, our police force is military trained by the IDF, and we're all passing notes. Okay? Is that you are allowed to, like, the British, they had to be shot upon before they're allowed to shoot back. Right?
Well,
that's the rule.
British police don't have guns, so
yes, right.
They don't have.
The Israelis and in turn our military and police forces are allowed to fire if they feel their life is threatened. Okay, so when we stop prefrontal cortex thinking, right? We've lost the ability for actual reasoning, right? Our adrenaline spikes through the amygdala. Our amygdala takes over. That's your lizard brain. That's your, I'm afraid of this space, I have to get out. That's like when you're, all the phobias, it's going through that. Right?
Right.
So, it's, like, this is why police fire on unarmed people all the time, too. It's the same thing. You know?
But also, keep in mind, like, you're enlisted in the IDF when you were in college, like, to give an idea, like, you're 18, 19, 20 years old. Like,
and it turns into us versus them. There is people in,
So
there's
these
civvies, and there's everyone else.
Right. So
Like-
these are kids, essentially, being trained, and they may not have, and imagine, like, the propaganda they're hearing,
Yes.
you know, prior to all of this just being like, as Ori said, we've been trained or we've been conditioned to believe that Palestinians are bad.
Which
you know, and hearing
this goes even further because it's not just standard propaganda. This is religious propaganda on top of that.
Right. Right.
And centuries of it, not just like this centuries. Like, this is, you're afraid for your life because you think the Egyptian is out to get you like he got Moses. Like, it goes back that far.
Right.
Like, you know, so, and this is what you were told at Temple. And this is what you were told, like, and what do you think happens to the Palestinians? You don't think that's generational trauma doing what they're doing?
Right.
Like, yeah. So
So it's, but I think I think it's kind of interesting to kind of make this connection between, because there's Ori who recognized what he did. And, you know, and you could, well, I'm not sure if he had therapy, but I think, like, he had something kind of click with him. Well, all of them do, like, but something clicked with him that he made this is wrong. Like, and I'm curious to know, and he doesn't say.
Miko Peled is the son of a general in the IDF. He was able to figure that out. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I wonder with Ori how he was able to figure it. But
I think it's just
Nuno's case.
How did people in Vietnam figure it out? You live it, you experience it, and you have no other option. So,
but in Nuno's case, with the people, the former soldiers that he talked to, they were still in the sense of, yeah, they had regret, but in terms of, no, I don't even can't even say they regretted it. It was just like, as Nuno said, I had no choice. You know, otherwise, children would kill me. So not to say it's confusing, but it's a little. It's not as evident as to why there. I guess maybe it was just too much, the trauma.
It's on top of like it's past trauma affecting that decision too, where it's like you've seen your buddies get shanked because they weren't paying attention enough, right? Like, he didn't leave someone at the under end of his barrel and things got too close, and you know, like they've seen that happen. Someone that they've been in camp with for, I don't know, 6-7 months, they formed bonds through the trauma of boot camp, which is its own brainwashing situation. Like, you know, so, and this is stuff that they've dealt with usually earlier than that, right? Where it's like even Britain, even us, we have the Boy Scouts, you end up in JROTC, like, you know, it's part of it to make it's you versus whatever person that they point you towards, you know, and you automatically think the worst out of everyone and you will treat it that way. So, and then when they do make a mistake, they compartmentalize and they tell them to push it down and suppress it. Like, it's fucked up. It's generational trauma times 1,000.
I just kind of wonder, and I wonder if Nuno knows this. I think with the IDF soldiers that because they essentially were partying. So I just wonder if that's kind of a subtle way of escape in terms of what they did, and like, oh, I am just going to, and you know, like, God knows if there were like alcohol/drugs involved.
Yeah.
You know, like where they were at, possibly.
I mean, bro, you want to go back to like Apocalypse Now, and like, I mean, it's the same kind of crap we did in different places, you know. So,
but
you end up with
very significant.
They're out there barbecuing after they burned half a fucking jungle, like, you know, it's morale and brainwashing, and you know,
and I think this is, you can argue this is almost kind of cultish in the terms of.
Well, we'll get to it in a bit after what we did in Afghanistan and the Australians did in Afghanistan with what David McBride talked about. It's worse than you think. You know?
Yeah, but it's just so significant that these are kids. And that's the thing that you have to remember. Like, these are not grown ass men like Reef and I. Like, many of, at least when they're starting out, they are just barely out of high school. You know? So you have kids.
MC Abdul.
No.
I'll show you him after this if you've not seen him before. He's probably, I would say, now maybe in his like early preteens, like 12, 13 maybe. But when he first started doing what he was doing, he's a rapper, talks about Palestine. At like, I don't know, he might have been 8, you know, like when I first saw him. So, like, that's just their end, which is why you have, like, I saw people, you know, they send rockets over to Israel, and it's, you know, they're happy, like children, and it's because it's generational trauma on their end too. So, you know, it's eye for an eye for centuries ends up with this.
Right. And Well, I prepped this before
Yeah.
the DC march yesterday, but you saw it there. The idea that I'll say it, the Zionists there were calling for no ceasefire.
Yes.
You know, and just seeing clips since of the
Well, I think that
sense of
that might have clicked for some. I saw a few of the people who would normally not say jack shit, like be like, "Ooh, that's bad, guys," and it's all in the vein of like, "You guys are fucking this up." It's like all you got to do is not be dicks, and Israel's ours, and y'all are fucking it up.
But you've seen that. I haven't necessarily seen that. I've seen
Milano,
people kind of double
I'm saying
down.
specifically. But I've also seen your side too.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen more people kind of double down and being like, yeah, and
yeah.
So, and I'm like, you know, we talk about white supremacy in terms of, you know, people in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
You know, but like,
well, let's talk about the fucking controlled ops out here who because the bare minimum of this issue should be easy for you to take. Should be. It's very common sense, like genocide bad. Like, you don't need that many brain cells to figure this one out. That like you're seeing them very easily be like, oh yeah, I'm for it if it gets me some audience, if it gets me some, you know, any credibility right now, I'll take. You know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of them. Like, make that list yourself, you know. But I don't know. I'm seeing it. You're seeing it. It's like there's people more than willing to jump on this issue, you know. So, but. Be careful. Keep your eyes on a swivel out here is all I'm saying. You know?
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's just shocking. And I said this on Twitter yesterday that it's shocking that we're at the point in our livelihoods that we have people, and the irony is, especially for Jews, that your families went through the Holocaust in Europe, and yet you're justifying what's happening to Palestinians. And this is kind of what we talked about regarding peace versus liberation last week with Kwame Ture. Like, you want that peace for yourselves in terms of you want to come in and essentially steal the land of indigenous groups that have lived there for generations, and you're putting them through trauma, and you don't give a shit, but we're supposed to feel sorry for you in terms of the Holocaust. And we'll get more into that later in my next segment, but it's just kind of like, it does not compute with me at all. And so, but I think in terms of the IDF, I can't fault them. I cannot fault these soldiers because, again, this is all propaganda. This is all essentially brainwashing.
I mean, you should at this point know better. You know, you can figure it out.
But but if you're in an environment where that's what you see and that's what you're told and that's what you're taught, like, and you're kind of isolated from knowing another way.
Yes. Right. Like
then
a particular youth group with blonde hair and blue eyes. Like, we've been through this before. Like, we've done this, you know. Like, are they complicit? The ones working those camps, are they complicit? Like, to what end can we give them benefit of the doubt? You know? Like,
I mean, I argue that these soldiers are victims too, in terms of the environment that
I agree.
It's generational, but you know, that has been essentially plotted and schemed, you know, in terms of control. So it's not just control of the Palestinians, it's really
Yes.
control over the Israelis too, because the
Right.
idea and just doing the research that I do, like anyone who refuses unless you have good reason not to be involved in the IDF is shunned.
Well,
So this is
I'm just also going to be consistent in my like, just because it was like, that's not an excuse. Like that's yes.
no, no,
Yeah.
no. I'm not excusing it, but I can understand it in
No,
terms of
Yep. Same with
you
Hamas,
know, and
right?
again,
Like
these right.
same thing.
Yeah. And especially given for many of them that they're children
Yep.
being asked to kill. Not asked, ordered to kill. In the name of, again, as you said, religion. That
Right.
standing that, oh, this land belongs to us. We have a birthright to the
And
land.
culture and fear and yeah, there's a
Right.
definitely manipulation, you know. So but luckily, you know, I think information's a big part of that, right? The ones who control that narrative.
Right.
So
But
this is why stuff like this happens. Who I zoomies. There we go. Look at that. Yeah. So do you know about David McBride, Care Bear?
yes, you've read his articles before.
Yes, once or twice, but I don't think we've showcased his original thing. But I definitely had John Pilger before. And he's here writing for Consortium News. He writes, "We are Spartacus. There can't be democracy in colonial war. One aspires to decency, the other to fascism. Meanwhile, once welcome mavericks are heretics now in an underground of journalism and a landscape of mendacious conformity." John Pilger making sure you know he's got a dictionary. Okay? But anyway, in case people haven't seen this scene, right? This is Spartacus, right? But this guy is also Spartacus, and this guy, and this guy, and these two. They're all Spartacus. You know, there's some historical context we'll get to, but anything you want to say before we get started?
I am Spartacus.
I am Spartacus. You've watched the film, yes? Hopefully people in chat have watched this film. If not, you should.
Yeah.
This is one of those like film school 101. You know, we got to go back and watch this and Ben-Hur. Throw Gone with the Wind at the end of it just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
So this film was made like 1960s, right? Remember what else was happening during the 60s? Yes, Care Bear? You know how this works? We get a particular guy come up by the name of McCarthy. You remember him, right? So Spartacus, 1960 Hollywood film based on a book written secretly by the blacklisted novelist Howard Fast and adapted by the screenplay writer Dalton Trumbo, one of the Hollywood 10 who were banned for their un-American politics. It is a parable of resistance and heroism that speaks unreservedly to our own times. This is Spartacus, King of the Slaves, Care Bear. You know, who rebelled against Rome and fucking kicked some ass. All right? Like, okay? They were really upset at this ex-gladiator doing the business. Okay?
Right.
Both writers were communists and victims of Senator Joseph McCarthy, chairman of the GOC, the Government Operations Committee, and its permanent subcommittee on investigations of the U.S. Senate, which, during the Cold War, destroyed the careers and offered the lives of those principled and courageous enough to stand up to a homegrown fascism here in the US of A. So, this is a sharp time, now a precise time. Arthur Miller, The Crucible, you watch that too, K-Bear? He's going through his whole film 101 school here, John Pilger. If not, you should. Crucible's good. But we live no longer in the dusky afternoon where evil mixed itself with good and befuddled the world. There is one precise provocateur now, It is clear to see for those who want to see it and foretell its actions. It is a gang of states led by the United States whose stated objective is full spectrum dominance. Russia is still the hated one, Red China, the feared one. Just in case you didn't know the field yet. From Washington and London, the virulence has no limit. Israel, the colonial anachronism and unleashed attack dog, is armed to the teeth and granted historical impunity, so that we, the West, ensure the blood and tears never dry in Palestine. That's kind of we just talked about this in the last segment. British MPs who dare call for a ceasefire in Gaza are banished. The iron door of two-party politics closed to them by a labor leader who would withhold water and food from the children.
Right.
McCarthy's. Yes, please.
Yeah, and again, just we've talked about like Schumer and who else? Hakeem Jeffries showed up at the march yesterday, and basically being like, we stand with Israel, and the idea people were shouting no ceasefire, no ceasefire.
Not to mention, in the UK, he's talking about labor leaders, especially when they're still calling Jeremy Corbyn an anti-Semite. They've asked him to condemn Hamas. They've done all the terrible shit that they normally do. Meanwhile, what's Tony Blair doing? Meanwhile, the guy we know actively committed war crimes, that guy, and was complicit in Bush. Like, it was the UK who convicted him of that. Actually, they gave him a slap on the wrist and let him go.
Yep.
So, in case people aren't paying attention over there either. So, in McCarthy's time, there were bolt holes of truth. Mavericks welcomed then are heretics now. An underground of journalism exists, such as this site, a IE consortium. In a landscape of mendacious conformity, dissenting journalists have been defenestrated from the mainstream. As the great editor David Bowman wrote, the media's task is to invert the truth and support the illusions of democracy, including free press. Okay? By the way, John, you are definitely getting use out of that dictionary, bro. You're pulling some words out. I'm just saying, who'll be using defenestrated? You know anyone that be like, man, that whole day was really defenestrated the other day? Nope, nobody. Come on. Anyway, I love you. You're an educated man. I get it. Social democracy. Do what? Yeah, like you've been to college. Social democracy has shrunk to the width of a cigarette paper. That separates the principal policies of major parties. Their one subscription is to a capitalist cult, neoliberalism, and an imposed poverty described by UN Special Rapporteur as the immiseration of the significant part of the British population. War today is an unmoving shadow. Forever, imperial wars are designated normal. Iraq, the model is destroyed at a cost of 1 million lives and 3 million dispossessed. The destroyer, Blair, is personally enriched and fawned over at his party's conference as an electoral winner. Blair and his moral counter, Julian Assange, live 14 miles apart, one in a Regency mansion, the other in a cell, awaiting extradition to hell. According to a Brown University study, since 9/11, almost 6 million men, women, and children have been killed by America and its acolytes in the global war on terror. A monument is to be built in Washington in celebration of this mass murder. We covered this, yes, Care Bear? You remember this? Collin sometimes wonders why I bring stories, and then weeks later, things come up again. It's committee. I'm still waiting for, River of Butter to pay off, but it will. So its committee is chaired by the former president, George W. Blair's mentor, Afghanistan, where it started, was finally laid to waste when President Biden stole its national bank reserves. We needed them for Ukraine, Collin. Now they're in Israel. There have been many Afghanistans, The forensic William Blum devoted himself to making sense of a state terrorism that seldom spoke its name and so requires repetition. In my lifetime, the United States has overthrown or attempted to overthrow more than 50 governments. Most democracies. It has interfered in democratic elections in 30 countries. It has dropped bombs on the people of 30 countries, most of them poor and defenseless. It has fought to suppress liberation movements in 20 countries, and it has attempted to murder countless leaders. Perhaps I hear some of you saying, that is enough. As the final solution of Gaza is broadcast live to millions, the small faces of its victims etched in bombed rubble, framed between TV commercials for cars and pizza. Yes, that is surely enough. How profane is that word? Enough. Afghanistan was where the West sent young men weighed down with the ritual of warriors to kill people and enjoy it. We know some of them enjoyed it from the evidence of Australian SAS sociopaths, including a photograph of them drinking from an Afghan man's prosthetic. Who do we hear this from, Care Bear? Not one sociopath has been charged for this, and crimes such as kicking a man over a cliff, gunning down children point blank, slitting throats, none of it in battle. David McBride, a former Australian military lawyer who served twice in Afghanistan, was a true believer in the system as moral and honorable. He also has an abiding belief in truth and loyalty. He can define them as few can. This coming week, he is in court in Canberra as an alleged criminal. An Australian whistleblower reports Kieran Pender, a senior lawyer at the Australian Human Rights Law Centre, will face trial for blowing the whistle on horrendous wrongdoing. It is profoundly unjust that the first person on trial for war crimes in Afghanistan is the whistleblower and not an alleged war criminal. Funny that, Care Bear. This guy, David McBride.
Yeah.
We covered some of his stuff before, but I wanted to give kind of an overview for people who don't know how this operated. So, former Australian military lawyer McBride, once a captain in Britain's Special Air Service, aka the SAS, has been charged over the alleged leak of documents to journalists containing evidence of war crimes committed in Afghanistan by Australia's special forces. Okay? So, McBride, 55, appeared in the Australian Capital Territory Magistrates Court last Thursday. This is a long time ago. Accused of leaks to Australian Broadcasting Corporation and Fairfax media reports during 2014 to 2016. Okay? The charges relate in part to an ABC investigation published in 2017 called the Afghan Files. What does this sound like to you, Care Bear? Getting any parallels for another story we know?
Oh.
Like, I don't know,
Which
working
one?
Julian.
Yeah.
So this is like you start working for, like, I don't know, MSNBC, and then they publish all these documents, ones that you haven't thoroughly gone through and redacted all the important bits of, and then you're blamed for it and thrown under the bus. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Making sure we got that. So here it's the ABC, right? So the Afghan Files defense leak exposes deadly secrets of Australia's special forces. It provided some detail about long suppressed official investigations into alleged war crimes. Most of the documents, which the ABC did not release, reportedly covered at least 10 incidents between 2009 and 2013, which military investigators summarily cleared special forces soldiers of killing civilians, including children, or other war crimes. So this is direct depictions of war crimes that were committed that they covered up. Among the investigation's mentions were cases related to the death of a man and a 6-year-old child during a raid on his house and the killing of a detainee who was alone with a soldier. Again, there are others as part of this. Particularly, there's one about them cutting the hands off people. It gets pretty crazy. But any thoughts so far, Care Bear?
You know what? I'm gonna hold off for now because I want to see where this is going. But yes,
Sure.
I do. I just
So McBride can receive a sentence of up to 100 years, 100-year sentence, Collin, for revealing the cover-up of the great crime of Afghanistan. He tried to exercise his legal right as a whistleblower under the Public Interest Disclosure Act, which the current Attorney General Mark Dreyfus says delivers on our promise to strengthen protection for public sector whistleblowers, right? Yet it is Dreyfus, a labor minister, who signed off on the McBride trial following a punitive wait of 4 years and 8 months since his arrest at Sydney Airport, a wait that shredded his health and family. So, I wanted to go up. Where's it at? Public Interest Disclosure Act. Okay. So it essentially states that things have to be within the public interest. Okay. Right. Guess who gets to decide that?
Right. Not us.
We'll get to it. So those who know David and know of his hideous injustice done to him fill his street in Bondi near the beach in Sydney to wave their encouragement to his good and decent man. To them and me, he is a hero. McBride was affronted by what he found in the files he was ordered to inspect. Here was evidence of crimes and their cover-up. He passed hundreds of secret documents to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and the Sydney Morning Herald. Police raided the ABC's offices in Sydney while reporters and producers watched shocked as their computers were confiscated by the federal police. Oh no! Not the computers! We would have never had this happen to us. Attorney General Dreyfus, self-declared liberal reformer and friend of whistleblowers, has the single power to stop the McBride trial. A Freedom of Information search of his actions in this direction reveals little, at most, and indifference. You can't run a fully fledged democracy and a colonial war. One aspires to decency, the other is a form of fascism, regardless of its pretensions. Mark the killing fields of Gaza, bombed to dust by apartheid Israel. It is no coincidence that in rich yet impoverished Britain, an inquiry is currently being held into the gunning down by British SAS soldiers of 80 Afghans, all civilians, including a couple in bed. The grotesque injustice meted out to David McBride is minted from the injustice consuming his compatriot, Julian Assange. Both are friends of Pilger. Whenever I see them, I am optimistic. You cheer me, I tell Julian as he raises a defiant fist at the end of our visiting period. You make me feel proud. I tell David at our favorite coffee shop in Sydney. Their bravery has allowed many of us who might despair to understand the real meaning of a resistance we all share if we want to prevent the conquest of us, our conscience, our self-respect. If we prefer freedom and decency to compliance and collusion, in this, we are all Spartacus. So, Spartacus was the rebellious leader of Rome's slaves in 71 to 73 BC. There is a thrilling moment in the Kirk Douglas movie Spartacus when the Romans call on Spartacus's men to identify their leader and so be pardoned. Instead, hundreds of his comrades stand and raise their fist in solidarity and shout, I am Spartacus. The rebellion is underway. Julian and David are Spartacus. The Palestinians are Spartacus. People who fill the streets with flags and principles and solidarity are Spartacus. We are all Spartacus if we want to be. So breaking news from Consortium, right after I pulled this article. So, defeat for David McBride, military whistleblower on trial in Canberra for leaking to media Australian military murders of unarmed Afghans. Judge rules against instructing jury of public interest defense, saying duty is only to follow orders, not to violate them in the public interest. Will not instruct jury that a soldier's oath to the sovereign includes serving the public interest. You hear that, Care Bear?
Yeah.
Okay, so I might need to read that again for people. Judge rules against instructing jury of that PI defense, saying duty is only to follow orders, not to violate them in public interest. He will not instruct that jury, so he's essentially saying that a soldier's oath to the sovereign includes serving the public interest, that's not what it includes. So they don't work for you, they work for us. I will instruct the jury that there is no aspect of duty that allows accused to act in the public interest contrary to a lawful order. The judge said outside courtroom during break, McBride told press, "It looks like I will be convicted and will go to jail." His lawyers have asked to move case to appeal court now. Hearing tomorrow with a judge on this application, unmentioned in the courtroom. The 39 murdered, unarmed Afghans.
Of course.
Thoughts?
I mean, Julian Assange. This is like almost to this. Like it's they don't deviate from the script at all.
No. No, they don't.
Yeah. It's sad though because this is happening to. Well, we see what's happening in Palestine, anyway, like journalists are being killed, trying to report the truth, or like the way to get the truth out there is restricted right now. And then we have Julian Assange in jail, now David McBride in jail. Anyone, even in independent media, I think with us, demonetized or suppressed. Yeah, I mean, and just behind the scenes, like I think it might be once or every other week where I kind of vent to you.
Yeah.
And like, why in the hell am I doing this? Why are we doing this? Like, is it really a point for us being in independent media, only to get, I wouldn't say the ridicule, but like we're suppressed, so no one doesn't watch us necessarily. Like we don't have a big audience, but we're thankful to the audience that we do have, because as you say, I think we're cultivating an audience that really wants to learn things in a deeper way rather than and in a superficial way. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but we want to try and bring stuff that no one else is really talking about and kind of give a little more meat to a lot of the issues that maybe our colleagues might talk about. But we're not necessarily recognizing that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that kind of translates into what's higher. Like, I wouldn't call them our colleagues, but definitely like the people that I think in a lot of ways that independent media exists to model after these people. I think at least in theory, this is what is happening to them. And
this is precedent setting. Essentially.
Yeah, they've set the precedent, and like essentially they're being tortured for. And we're also not in the same way, we're kind of being tortured for it, because so yeah, it's just hard, and it's kind of like, why bother? But like, and I was kind of reminded, like again with Nuno, who we reported on last segment, of him doing this podcast and him being a little like, I'm not sure if I do this or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, like, look, the reality is you of Arab descent and having that access to Europe and having access, and you understand the world, like, you're a model. So he's traveled quite a bit. So he has an understanding of the world that most people probably in that region of the world would not have, but to able to kind of put that place in terms of Western thinking, that's needed.
Yeah.
But that also kind of reminds me of what people said to me before I get into the space, is that your voice is needed because you have a perspective
Yeah.
that needs to be shared. And so I think in a lot of ways that's what encourages me to keep going, because it's not about the fame, it's not about the clicks, whatever. At least it shouldn't be. It's about exposing the truth and doing our part to expose the truth, especially if it's situations that affect us personally. And yeah, but so I think, for me, the idea of quitting, and it's I will admit it's tempting, because every
Mhm.
week it's just almost kind of like, fuck it,
Yep.
I'm done.
More
Like,
more
sorry, Reef,
negativity
I'm
and
done.
depression. Yep.
The show ends. Like, but it's but these are the people that we should be modeling ourselves after, that they're willing to die, honestly, literally, like, in order.
Well, it's not. They have no other choice in the matter, really.
Right,
You
but
know?
I feel like in order to do, and like, yeah, I mean, we see a lot of journalists
Yes.
that sell out because they care more about their self-preservation versus the truth.
Yeah.
And we're seeing people like Assange, and we're seeing people like McBride, and we've seen others like, Vanessa Beeley and others who are willing to risk their lives to ensure that the truth is getting out there to whatever capacity that they're able to do, even to the point of death. And I think that's really, and I think we don't talk about that enough, especially independent media, is what you're willing to give up.
Yeah.
In terms of like, because if and we say this, if you're in it for the views or the clicks, then that's a red flag. At least for us, that's like, you're in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But what's your story? What's your intent? And are you willing to give up essentially livelihood in order to make sure that the truth is getting out there? And
no, I agree.
Yeah.
Hopefully things change, but
But
then.
I think, but that's where we come in. It's, I think the good thing, and I can argue the blessing of independent media, and I think especially for a lot of our colleagues who have been at this for so long, and especially like with Palestine, with this issue, it's been talked about in independent media for a relatively long time, I would argue. Like, I know, like, even when I started to get more acquainted with the space, even before I was in it doing this, shout out to Richie Medhurst, was talking about issues in the Middle East in a way that I never heard before, or wasn't necessarily hearing, at the time. That was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So, thanks to him and then others like him, like now when stuff is going down, especially with Israel and Hamas, people weren't necessarily buying. People were ready and were buying it. So I think it's just the idea of, and you kind of talk to me about this all the time, it's just being patient, but kind of sticking to your principles and keep continuing to, even if you're just a one issue person,
yeah,
like, but keep hammering that message over and over and over and over and over again. And eventually it will start making sense, especially if it's the truth. It will land at the right time. And
marathon shit.
Right. And I think even with David McBride, especially with what's happening with Assange, people are able to make this connection, I think, more readily, because it's like, oh, shit, like, similar situation. So what's really going on?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think it's just the idea of us really, truly doing the work that we set out to do. But I think asking ourselves, are we doing this with the purest of intent?
Right. Well, You ready for our next one?
Yeah. So speaking of purest of intent, this article that I'm going to reference, it's nuts. Like, I mean, in a way, I have to give. I forgot the journalist name right now, but I have to give props for actually doing this, and I have to give props to Danielle Weiss, again, this woman on the right. You know, just for being blatantly honest in terms of her Zionism. You know, and like, I can appreciate that because you know where she stands, and you know of her intent in terms of, why the things that she's done, and essentially why she is a Zionist, and what's her intention in terms of her role within the settler movement in the West Bank. So again, just to
Settler movement. Sure.
Yeah. That's what they call themselves. So just to give you a little bit of background about Daniela, she actually was mayor of Keduim. I assume that's in the West Bank. For I think about at least 6 years. Born in Palestine, but she is one of the movement. She's one of the big dogs in terms of the settler movement in the West Bank. Since the 90s.
Right.
So she did an interview. Let's see. Catch up. So she did an interview with the New Yorker with Isaac Chotiner.
Ambitions of a rider. Sorry, what?
The extreme ambitions of West Bank settlers, a leader of the settlement movement on expanding into Gaza, and a vision for the Jewish state. So, as I said, this kind of went mini viral over the weekend, and I thought it was just. But it kind of gives, like, again, talking about the IDF. So I'm kind of glad that we did that, my former segment, to give context to it. Now we have the visuals and everything. Now we get to hear, her side.
Right.
In terms of her vision, for the West Bank and the Israeli state.
Okay.
So for decades, Daniela Weiss has been one of the leaders of Israel's settler movement. Weiss became involved in settlement politics in the wake of the 1967 war. In the early 70s, her family moved to the settlements in the West Bank, and she later served for a decade as mayor of Keduim, a community in the north. She has also been arrested numerous times, including for assaulting a police officer and interfering with an investigation into the destruction of Palestinian property. More recently, she has been affiliated with the Nakala Settlement Organization, which helps younger settlers establish illegal outposts in the West Bank, an initiative that's controversial even among the settler community. Weiss is a neighbor and ally of Bezalel Smotrich, the extremist minister of finance, who has said that the Palestinian people do not exist and that Palestinian communities need to be erased. He also lives in Keduim.
Okay.
Weiss and I really recently spoke by phone. Since the Hamas massacre of October 7th, Benjamin Netanyahu's government, in addition to invading Gaza, has, with its allies in the settler movement, become increasingly aggressive in the West Bank. 16 Palestinian communities have been removed from their land, and 175 Palestinians have been killed. I wanted to talk to Weiss to understand the extremism of the settler movement and her ultimate intentions for the West Bank. During our conversation, edited for length and clarity, we also discussed how her religious attitudes shape her view of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, why human rights should not be considered universal, and why she should not be expected to mourn for dead Palestinian children. So you already see the fuck shit already.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
so you can tell this is going to be a doozy of an interview. But yeah. So, anyway, so he continues. Where are you from? I was born in Israel in 1945, 3 years before the birth of the modern Jewish state. I was born in the Tel Aviv area. And your parents? My father was born in the United States. My mother was born in Warsaw, Poland, and she immigrated with her parents to Israel when she was a year old. She became to Israel many years before the state of Israel was born. How would you describe the settler movement? I see the settler movement today as a direct continuation of the settler movement of 120, 30, 40 years ago. I see it as a chapter in the history of Zionism, and we are one of those chapters of modern Zionism. Settlement is the way to return to Zion. You said settlement is the way to return to Zion. Yes, it's the end of dispersion and the beginning of the revival of the nation in this homeland.
Okay.
What are the borders of that Jewish nation? The borders of the homeland of the Jews are the Euphrates in the east and the Nile in the southwest. This would include the territory of multiple Middle Eastern countries, as well as the territory that Israel controls today.
Right.
Right? We've talked about this, right?
More than just Israel. Yes.
More than just Israel. So that's why
like
Egypt,
Syria
Jordan,
and Egypt,
Syria,
and
Lebanon are not fucking with Israel right now.
So hold on. Pause. Because
yes,
from the Euphrates to the Nile. Okay, so we're going to take one river and go to another river. It's very similar to another phrase I've heard recently.
Yep.
But also, it's a lot bigger of an area you want to control than just from the river to the sea. You want to the Nile. So you want from the river to the river.
You know what? I thought of this. Can you pull up a map of the Middle East? Just to give people context.
I can do that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to kind of see what she's talking about. Because, as you said, Palestinians are demanding from the river to the sea. So basically, they're saying from the Jordan to the Mediterranean.
Right.
So basically, that sliver of what is Palestine / Israel. So
here's Jerusalem. Right. There's Tel Aviv. Right. So if we back out here, right, this should be. Well, Nile's going to be like over here.
Egypt. So, over there. Yeah. So over there.
Yeah.
That's the Nile in Egypt.
Yeah.
Right?
I imagine through here, through Cairo.
The Euphrates is going to be to the east in like Saudi Arabia area. Like over there. So
yeah. Okay. So yeah, a lot bigger than from here to here.
Right. So yeah.
From here.
So
like way over here. I mean, we could literally do how about Euphrates River? It's in Iraq.
Yeah.
So we go that's the river, so we zoom outies. Keep zooming. Come on. So yeah, from here to here.
Right. So, and there's significance for that because that's a trade route.
Yes. I mean, it's literally like the trade route.
That's
like,
the trade route.
Classically.
Right. But that's why Israel, with help of the West, want to take.
Yeah.
You know, so, but regardless, you know, I will get more into this later, but when Palestinians say from the river to the sea, that's some bullshit, but she's saying from the Euphrates to the Nile, which is a bigger territory, that's seemingly okay. So, and as I said, we'll get more into that later. Actually, let's talk about this here. There's a Palestinian slogan that has become very controversial: from the river to the sea, which means from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. It's controversial because it would include all the land that currently makes up Israel. But you're saying from the river to the... What is controversial? So Dan asked, what is controversial? Palestinians sometimes use the slogan from the river to the sea, but what you're saying is that from the river to the Nile is the Jewish homeland.
No.
Correct?
No. She's saying a different river.
Right. So
Like,
this dude fucked up. And I wonder
he
if
doesn't
that's on
know.
purpose.
He assumed that that's the river, but the Euphrates is in
No.
Iraq, the Nile's in Egypt.
Right.
Like, so no.
So no. So homeboy doesn't know his geography, or
Yes.
he didn't catch that.
I mean, I didn't unless I Googled, but luckily, like I'm smart boy. I go, I don't know where this is at. Let me look at map. Okay,
Right.
here. Okay, that's not like here. Like that's not
Right.
okay.
So,
But of course.
If someone decides to invent a new religion today, who will decide the rules? The first nation that got the word from God, the promise from God, the first nation is the one who has the right to it. The others that follow, Christianity and Islam, with their demands, with their perceptions, they're imitating what exists already. So why in Israel? They could be anywhere in the world. They came after us in a double sense.
Okay. Pause. Okay, pause. Do you fucking think? Are you so fucking stupid that you think the Jews are the first religion? Let's fucking start with that bullshit right there. Okay, look, like fucking cut head. You know that other river you were talking about? That one about the Nile?
Euphrates.
Y'all know y'all had like Ra and fucking Hemotep before. And like, what are they? What are they? I don't know. Depictions of Mesopotamian gods that got fucking like, which were then depictions of like the other African gods that like,
which is mentioned in the Old Testament.
Yes.
So
yes, we get like Baal and like there's like y'all motherfucker need to reread that Old Testament. I know it's tough. I know it's in Hebrew, but like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, you remember how Moses brought like some fucking shit, and then there was another religion that didn't. Okay, just saying. Like,
anyway,
whatever.
At least you're having fun with that.
I mean, you might as well.
Yeah. When did you first get involved in the settler movement? In 1967, in the Six-Day War. The Six-Day War was such a miracle and aroused very deep feelings toward the birthplace of our nation. Hebron, Shiloh, Jericho, Nablus. And because of the miracle of the war, we had this spiritual sensation.
They think a fucking war is a miracle. Okay, continue.
And because the miracle of the war, we had this spiritual sensation that something happened in the dimensions of a biblical scene. I felt that I wanted to be an active part in this miraculous happening. My husband didn't like the idea of moving from Tel Aviv to the mountains of Judea and Samaria. He liked our life near Tel Aviv. But then, when the Yom Kippur War broke out in 1973, I became involved in a very intensive way, and so did my husband. We both became part of a settler movement of Gush Enuim, the movement that established communities in Judea and Samaria. I forced my husband to follow me and our two daughters, they were little ones, to a tiny tent on the mountains of Samaria where we all live today. Now we have a big family with 4 generations. My mother-in-law came with us, and then we had our daughters and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They were all settlers in Samaria.
Okay.
In a lot of these places where settlements have been developed from 1967 to the present day, there have been Palestinian communities and Palestinian families. What is your feeling about where these people should go? It's the opposite. None of the communities in Judea and Samaria are founded on an Arab place or property, and whoever says this is a liar. I wonder why you said it. Why did you say that since you have no idea about the real facts of history? That's not true. The opposite is true. Who got this idea into your mind? Palestinian communities have been removed from their land, kicked off their land by... No, you never read things like that. No, there are no pictures. According to a report by B'Tselem, an Israeli human rights group, parts of Kejuim, where Weiss lives, were built on private Palestinian land in 2006.
Yep.
He's now found that privately owned Palestinian land comprised nearly 40% of the territory of West Bank settlements and outposts.
Yeah, there's no pictures. Are you fucking...
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god. Stop you fucking lying.
Like, stop it. Fucking, there's no pictures. Get the fuck. Like, there's pictures from fucking 1948, homegirl. Like, you know, like, what do you, there's pictures of before. It wasn't just like rocks and rubble then.
Oh no, and hold on to that, because I got more that talks about that in a different, not picture, but video.
Okay.
So,
oh, you mean of
we'll
like
that
secular Palestine when it was like fucking roaring 20 cars were rolling by and
something like that. Something like that. But
yeah.
But yeah, we'll get to it. Okay. I'm a little surprised you are denying this. I thought you were going to say it's okay to kick Palestinians off land because it belongs to Jewish people. You did no homework before you interviewed me. Everything that you say is the opposite of my personality and my philosophy. You're interviewing a person and you don't know anything about it. It's very strange. I've never encountered a situation like this. I was trying to understand where Palestinians who live in the West Bank should go. Why should they go? Why should they go? They should stay where they are, you're saying. They should accept the fact that the land of Israel, there is only one sovereign. This is the issue. So let's not confuse things. We, the Jews, are the sovereigns in the state of Israel and in the land of Israel. They have to accept it.
If it was the shoe on the other foot, would you? No.
If they accept it, should they receive full voting rights and things like that? In the state of Israel, they have the right to vote for the Knesset because Ben-Gurion gave them this right.
Yep.
He trusted them, and even if he didn't trust them, he didn't have much of a choice. 3 years after the Holocaust, he wanted to have a state for the Jews, and he knew the world would make problems with the issue of voting. But in the 75 years since independence, the Arabs in the state of Israel and the Arab members of the Knesset showed in every possible way that their idea is to establish a Palestinian state. They are not working for the interests of the state of Israel. So I think the Arabs in Judea and Samaria have no right to ask for rights or take part in the elections for the Knesset. They lost their right to vote for the Knesset. They will never get this right. They will have their own Palestinian authority where they can run their civilian affairs in a logical way, but not as members of the Knesset. No.
Silent K.
So rights are not some sort of universal thing every person has. There's something that you can win or lose. That's right.
Okay.
You've been part of the settlement movement during a lot of different. How do you feel that the current government of the past year has been treating settlers broadly compared with past government? I will say that it's better under Netanyahu. It doesn't satisfy my ambitions and my dreams and my plans, but there are 800,000 Jews or settlers if you want. So this gives me a lot of encouragement that from that 800,000 will become 2 million, then 3 million. When you say that the government's been better but hasn't realized your dreams, what are those dreams? 2 million Jews in Judea and Samaria, more settlements, more farms, bigger cities. When you say that you want more Jews in the West Bank, is your idea that the Palestinians there and the Jews will live side by side as friends, or that if they accept our sovereignty, they can live there? So they should accept the sovereign power, but that doesn't necessarily mean having rights. It just means accepting the sovereign power. Right. No, I'm saying specifically that they're not going to have the right to vote for them to set. No, no, no. Can you talk about the settlement outpost movement and your role in that, especially with young people that you served as somewhat of an inspiration for? A post is a basis for a bigger community. That's the name of the game. And why is that controversial even among the settlers? I don't know that it's controversial. Some might not know the process. And people say to me, I want to build a new outpost that will be as nice as the older one that we see. I say to them, it was a place with one family and now hundreds of. So this is how it started. In Israel, there's a lot of support for settlements, and this is why there have been right-wing governments for so many years. See that?
Yep.
So the world, and especially the United States, think there is an option for a Palestinian state, and if we continue to build communities, then we block the option for a Palestinian state. We want to close the option for a Palestinian state, and the world wants to leave the option open. It's a very simple thing to understand. So, again, I kind of admire her honesty here.
Yeah, it's
Like-
single state solution, just we want it.
Right,
Yeah. Which is why it should be the opposite at this point.
right.
Like, okay.
When Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, it also closed down settlements in the region. This was under the Sharon government. And there's been talk by some settlers since October 7th about the need to repopulate Gaza with settlement.
Yep.
What are your feelings about what should happen with Gaza? Right now, I'm on my way to a TV interview where I'm going to speak about our movement's efforts to return to Gaza, the entire Gaza, and build settlements. I think that what I also pulled is from that interview, actually.
I'll be talking about it soon, so as well. So
Okay.
at least
So you
partially.
think it was a mistake? Yeah. So you think it was a mistake to pull out of settlements nearly 20 years ago? It was a mistake. The whole world is crying now because of that. The whole world suffers from Hamas's rise.
Which
Not
y'all
my
did.
problem.
It is your
It's
problem,
your
in fact.
No
It's-
country in the world said they were going to accept even 1,000 people from Gaza. The world hates them. It was such a big mistake to let them rise.
Except that's not the case. There have been people accepting refugees from Gaza, including us. But also, maybe it's because they don't want them forced out of their homeland. Maybe that's maybe it's that. So
Where should the Palestinians in Gaza go? To Sinai, to Egypt, to Turkey.
pause.
They're not Egyptian.
They still want Egypt. They want it to fucking cut like the Nile.
Right.
So if they go to Egypt and in 10 fucking years you make it to the fucking Nile, where are they gonna go then?
Right. Well, this is what I've been saying is the idea of like they want them to go to the places to give the excuse, oh, we need to take over. Because as she said, from the Euphrates to the Nile. So if they go to Egypt, that's going to expand their, that gives them excuse to expand their territory. So they're not Egyptian or Turkish though. Why would they go to Turkey? Okay, the Ukrainians are not French, but when the war started, they went to so many countries. Their country was being bombed, and so many of them fled west. And Gazan people are dying to go to other places. Except they can't because you don't allow them
Yes,
to.
and then you bomb their fucking ways out.
I think Ukrainians wanted to go to Europe because they get bombed. And the Gazan people want to get bombed by us. Maybe one option rather than bombing them, would be to try to develop a society for them in Gaza, right? Okay, I wish you luck. Go ahead, go for it. So, so Green Newsom, actually, she responded to that part on Twitter. The piece that I just read.
Right.
She says, perfect example of how USA is doing to the Palestinians exactly what they accuse Russia of doing to the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
Only they say Ukraine has a right to defend itself, but Palestine doesn't. This is apparent to anyone outside the bubble of US imperialism.
Also, the fact that they are trying to equivocate the two when that isn't there's far more evidence of Azov battalions literally in rooms where children were taught, like literally in hospitals. Like there's video and like, which we'll get to. You guys don't have video of the opposite of Hamas in tunnels that you built. Like, which not even talking about the fact that because there's no gas coming in, how the fuck are they going to be able to pump air down there? Anyone still in the tunnels is dead. Like, you know, like even the Great Escape had to pump air into a tunnel. And that was like 60 feet or some craziness. However far fucking Brando had to crawl. Okay.
Do you feel that Netanyahu and his government to you and your cause? He's very sympathetic, but he's not as brave as we are. We saw some horrible images on October 7th of what happened to Israeli children, and now we see some of what is happening to Palestinian children. When you see Palestinian children dying, what's your emotional reaction as a human being? I go by a very basic human law of nature. My children are prior to the children of the enemy, period. They are first. My children are first. We are talking about children. I don't know if law of nature is what we need to be looking at here. Yeah, I say my children are first.
And what about what they say? Like, they say their children are first. So you wonder why they might fucking point a stick at you. Like, it's maybe because you've been fucking bombing them. It might be a little bit of that. Fucking anyway.
So this is her. I think this is the interview that she described that she did. So it's very short. So let's take a listen to what she says here. The land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. And all of Gaza belongs to the land of Israel. According to the map, from the Euphrates River to the Nile River. So she says it again. What if it's in our hands? We have seen the Arabs leaving their homes. We have to invade. When? Directly after the war. We can invade the northern borders immediately.
Yep. The northern borders. Not Gaza, where Hamas is.
Right.
You know. Sure. Okay.
You said you wanted to say something, I think. You said.
No, it's just the northern border. It's like her idea of what they fucking own is so far what everyone else even thinks they fucking own. Like, and this is, I was talking about this with Indy the other day. Like, what does it stop there? Like, who's to say they don't want to move past the Nile?
Right.
And we've been funding it.
Right.
It's using our technology and tactics and whatever. Like, it's us. And if you don't think BlackRock and whatever are in there buying up their own real estate, just like they have been in Ukraine, and they're the ones going to rebuild the stuff.
Right.
Like, This is money and resources to be had.
Right. Speaking of resources, we talked about how, and I know a lot of people have mentioned this before in the independent media, that there's a huge oil reserve just out the Gaza coast.
Natural gas.
So,
yeah. And where there's natural gas, there's oil.
And oil, too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of...
Not to mention, between the Nile and the Euphrates, there's quite a large amount of oil and natural gas. So,
right. But then also just the Suez Canal, which is also in Egypt, you know, which is a huge trading port. So imagine Israel having control of that and basically having control. Essentially, I think you remember maybe a couple of years ago when that freighter kind of got stuck in the Suez.
Yeah, one Valdez.
Yeah, and
the one that got stuck. Yeah, in the canal.
Yeah, the one that got stuck. Yeah, that was. I think it was 2 years ago. So like that just stopped, you know, trade for like weeks.
Yeah.
So imagine Israel having control over that.
Right.
So, but anyway, but not just those resources. I found this clip from Al Jazeera about other natural resources in the West Bank that potentially, and I'm sure a lot of people won't think of it in this way, that the settlers probably potentially want to exploit as well. So you'll see what I mean in a second.
جيت أنا عبط شجرة الزيتون من غلاتها عبطتها على فقدي.
It was precious to me, so I hugged it. I felt like I was hugging my child. I raised a tree like my child. Mafoda Gia, sorry, her name, is a Palestinian farmer in the photograph from 2005, who embraced the trunk of an olive tree after it was attacked by Israeli settlers. Since 1967, the Israeli authorities and settlers have uprooted at least 800,000 olive trees belonging to Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. They attacked about 500 trees
filled with olives.
Each tree could have filled 2 sacks of olives. Olive trees are a crucial source of income for Palestinians and a symbol of Palestinian national identity and connection to their homeland. During the 2020 olive harvest season, at least 26 Palestinians were injured, and more than 1,700 trees were vandalized by Israeli settlers. In 2021, at least 365 settler attacks against Palestinians were recorded.
So you mean it's not just October 7th?
Settler violence is being primarily designed to take over land, but also to imitate and terrorize Palestinians, according to UN.
Intimidate, yep.
Intimidate. They destroyed my olive trees, but I grew them back. I tended them and they came back even better than before. Settlers will never be able to take my land. This is our land, not theirs. We will keep resisting until the world ends.
So, yeah. I mean, olives are kind of important to them.
Yeah. I will argue the point, well, to the regions.
I mean, it's really on their, what are the scars called? Kufias? Yeah. Like part of the patterning on that is leaves of an olive tree. Like that's standard.
Tree. Yeah.
So,
so
that and like fish are part of that, and you know, so Desert Man said in the chat taking their livelihoods, their income. And it's not like these trees don't. They're not like, you know, like they take a minute to get that big. Like,
right.
You know,
and
those
produce
aren't
the olives that they need. So
right. Yep. Well, you have Baldwin
anyway,
here.
So couple more. So we have James Baldwin here, who kind of talks about. So this is kind of going back to, you know, like, you know, the phrase one of it. He doesn't talk about it here, but he does mention the
Something close, right?
Here. But talking about the hypocrisy in terms of phrases that when I'll let him talk, and you'll be able, you guys are smart.
If we were Irish, if we were Jewish, if we were Poles, if we had, in fact, in your mind, a frame of reference, our heroes would be your heroes too. Nat Turner would be a hero for us instead of a threat. Malcolm X might still be alive. And, you know, everyone is very proud of brave little Israel, a state against which I have nothing. You know, I don't want to be misinterpreted. I'm not an anti-Semite. But, you know, when the Israelis pick up guns, or the Poles, or the Irish, or any white man in the world says, give me liberty or give me death, the entire white world applauds. When a black man says exactly the same thing, word for word, he is judged a criminal and treated like one, and everything possible is done to make an example of this bad nigger so there won't be any more like him.
I mean, change the N-word to Palestinian.
Right.
And you'll get, or anyone of color, I would argue. And
we've got this guy. If I zoomies. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none. Has none. Replace that for Israel. You know.
Right.
Same difference, correct?
Yeah.
So,
I got one more clip. This was a gift on Monday. So, and I think this is very poignant given the protests in DC yesterday. So, but this is now. It's long, but hear every word. Most of what she said. But and I guess she's very popular on TikTok, probably for the right and not necessarily.
Yeah, what is it? Weeping the Jeebles?
Something.
My fellow Jews, we need to talk. And heads up, this will be necessarily uncomfortable for us both. The discourse on Zionism and the escalation between Israel and Palestine has completely devolved into identity politics and vitriol. Now, I'm not trying to center Jews per se, but the reality is when Jews come together and stand up for the rights of others, the world takes notice. So where we stand on this issue is very important. And we seem to be standing on two very opposite sides of the spectrum. Now, I'm worried that this situation is going to devolve further in the coming weeks and months, involving surrounding nations, potentially starting a much larger war. So at this juncture, I am urgently reaching out to my Zionist friends, family, and followers, and I hope you'll listen with your heart open. Now, I'm aware that many self-identifying Zionists believe that Jewishness and Zionism are one and the same. And I agree with you to the extent that this is the common perception. I'm also aware that many self-identifying Zionists define Zionism as self-determination for a Jewish homeland. And often the definition stops there. For me, this definition necessarily expands to at the expense of Palestinian citizens. And this is where I draw a very hard line, because to accept the former without the latter requires a large amount of dissonance. Now, you may be thinking, I'm an American Jew, what's it got to do with me? Why is it important that we consider our position on Zionism? In the world's eye, Israel is a Jewish state because it's declared itself as such. And we know with a great deal of recorded evidence that the Israeli government has been oppressing Palestinians all this time. And here's the important part. while hiding behind the shield of Judaism and the Shoah, using it as both its defense and its sword. This is so incredibly infuriating and offensive. But do you know what I find more infuriating and offensive? Genocide, murder, pain, suffering, no matter who does it, no matter who receives it. We should at least agree on that. Israel, the country which claims to be of and for the Jewish people, is by the numbers inflicting more harm, more death, more destruction onto the Palestinian people than Hamas ever did to Israel. Hamas is a terrorist organization, yes. And the Israeli government is an oppressive totalitarian regime holding far more power over money, resources, and narrative. If you're an American Jew, it's relevant that our military and our president is providing millions in funding to Israel so it can bring more might, fury, and more slaughter to innocent Palestinians. They aren't targeting Hamas, despite having the intelligence and resources to do so. They are leveling cities and bombing civilians indiscriminately. Now, if you disagree, I would be open to seeing any evidence you have of measured, precise attacks. But that's not what I've been seeing. Please don't scroll me away because these words hurt you to hear. If you're as uncomfortable as I am right now, you need to hear this so that we can grow. This is being done in our name. It's a disgrace to Jewish identity. It should offend you deeply, right down to your heart. Even if it's not you and I doing it, personally. Even if you have not previously defined Zionism this way, this is in fact what Zionism accomplishes. Zionism hasn't been about Jews having a homeland for some time. We have a homeland. Nobody's taking that away. For fuck's sake, Israel is backed by the US military. It doesn't need to harm innocent civilians to exist, but it does, and it is, and it's using our good name to do it, and calling that Zionism. And they've been working hard a very long time to convince you and the world that Zionism and Jewishness are one and the same, thereby tethering your identity, your very being to their actions, no matter how awful they become. And if you've fallen for their absolutism, to decry their actions, well, that could feel like betraying yourself. Have you heard of cognitive dissonance? It's an ego defense we all use to reduce the discomfort we experience when our behavior or our expressed beliefs are at odds with our self-concept. And most humans will go to great lengths to reduce this discomfort. For example, pretending the threat to our belief doesn't exist. Distracting from the threat to our belief, commonly accomplished with whataboutism. Justifying the belief. Perhaps the violence is necessary retribution for an offense, or even to prevent a future offense, or we reframe the threat to our identity as for the greater good. And lastly, the one you're likely experiencing now, toward me. Discredit the source. Any direct threats to your belief can be simply dismissed as anti-Semitic. Use of this word against our own. I can't begin to tell you how upsetting that is. This should immediately feel manipulative as it leaves your mouth. Alarms should go off. Understand that this last strategy is a tool used inappropriately by Israeli and the United States authorities to protect their actions from any scrutiny at all. If this label is used in this way, it loses its power when needed for its intended purpose, ironically worsening the potency.
Collin, who's she been listening to? She been listening to me? She be talking about labels. What she know about labels? Huh?
Of real anti-Semitism. Being anti-Zionist isn't anti-Semitic. When you make this claim, you use the entirety of the Jewish diaspora as human shields. It reduces our existence, everything it means to be Jewish, all of us, every Mizrahi and Sephardi and Ashkenaz, every black, brown, Asian, mixed race Jew, every one of us standing together as one on Mount Zion, everything we have survived and rebuilt and carried on through generations, Kenachora, it reduces us to a fucking MAGA hat. This misuse brands anti-Semitism as a phrase that can't be taken seriously. In the world's eye, we become a bunch of white people crying wolf while simultaneously harming others. If this isn't how you wish to be seen, ask yourself how this has come to pass. Is this really consistent with who you consider yourself to be? And why are right-wing American politicians parenting the same talking points? Who benefits here and who loses? If the global Jewish diaspora has anyone to blame for the rise of anti-Semitism and renewed fear of living in a non-Jewish society, as, by the way, we've successfully done for thousands of years, it is the Israeli government. It's Bibi and his butthole friends. Their actions are, in fact, antithetical to Jewish teachings and everything it means to be Jewish. There is no tikkun olam, no tzedakah in their actions or their messaging. There's only greed, power, and hate. Tell me, where is that in the Torah? They don't care about what it means to be a Jew, but you should. We can't undo the damage that's been done, but we can change our minds at any time. That's the beauty of freedom. Of anybody, we should know how precious and fragile that beauty is. The most Jewish thing to do is the tzedakah of protecting the freedoms of others and openly rejecting anything that benefits Jews at the expense of others, even and especially if it means you have to reject Zionism.
I mean, next.
Yep. And girl, you're welcome to lead the religion at any time. I'm just saying. You don't got to be trapped in that thing. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like that Church of Latter-day Saints. I'm going to get you out, girl. It's okay. It's going to be all right.
She can, shout out to her for being so articulate and saying
absolutely.
I probably wanted to say in a better way than I ever could. And she said a lot there, but I'll just end the segment, with this in terms of what is, if your freedom, let me rephrase, if your liberation is at the expense of taking away another's liberation, is that something that you really want? So,
yep.
And I'm just going to leave it at that. I think for our audience, I think the answer is very obvious. But as we've seen for many, like, it's surprising. Like, we talked about how, 2/3 of the country want a ceasefire, and I've made this argument: a ceasefire in of itself is not enough. But that's where we're at. But yesterday we found where the other third of the people lie.
Yep.
And
this is classic. This is how religions are used time and time again.
Right.
Time and time and time again. So for me, it's like, yep, this is called manipulation. That's how this works. They teach you a ton of these morals, and then the minute those morals become complicated, they're just like, don't worry about it. This is faith. Just trust us. It's like, okay, yeah, okay. But anyway, here's the kind of stuff being done in that lady's name. So she talked about BB and his butthole friends. We'll get to them. So this is from Mint Press. Big fans of them over here. Jessica Buxbaum from Mint Press does some pretty good work on this. The reality of Gaza's forced exodus, unveiling Israel's secret plan. Boo, boo, boo. Fucking secret plan, Collin. Turns out not so secret either, but it's been a plan for a minute. So last weekend, Israeli newspaper Local Call leaked an official Israeli government document recommending what Palestinians have been saying Israel is already trying to execute with its war on Gaza. The forcible transfer of Gaza's 2.3 million Palestinian population to Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. We've been talking about this all night. Sinai, yeah. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office acknowledged the intelligence ministry's proposal's exit. Still, it dismissed it in a statement to the Times of Israel as a concept paper, the likes of which are prepared at all levels of the government and security agencies. So immediate backpedal. Immediate. Yep. Just hit that little backpedal, fucking little crossfade goes for the 3. So, yet Israel's actions, circulating information, and international support all signal that this policy on paper is quickly transitioning to the policy on the ground. This reminds me of the talks about, and I forget who it was, and someone will let me know in the chat, but talking to an American general where he hands him a paper and like goes, this is what we're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan and whatever. It has nothing to do with 9/11. We're just going to invade these 7 countries. And he then whistle blew on that, and everyone was like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Turns out exactly what happened. That's what this sounds like. So the document dated October 13th calls for Israel to evacuate the Gazan civilian population to Sinai, first by establishing tent cities and then building new towns in northern Sinai. Following the resettlement, the paper recommends to create a sterile zone of several kilometers inside Egypt and not allow the population to return to activity or residence near the Israeli border. Wesley Clark is what Desert Mantis saying. That's who whistle blew on that thing I talked about earlier. What does that sound like, Collin? We've seen some things in history very related to that.
Right, but what I was thinking immediately, this gives precedence to what Daniela Weiss was saying in our previous.
Yes. Yep.
You know.
Yep. Send them over to Egypt and Sinai
and what will keep Netanyahu in power? If people like her
Mm-hmm.
are making that demand that we want them out, we want them into Egypt so we can essentially take that over too, you know, Bibi is going to go for it if he wants to maintain his position. So it just kind of shows.
Yeah, it's
like
politics
that's why
at
they're
work.
voted in, even though their politics, I think, are
It's
disastrous.
like the evangelical vote of Israel is causing this.
Right.
Over and over again. That is if they have a democracy that works at all. You know? Which we know they don't, because when they put in one of his competitors, it was the same. Wait, I gotta go back. So Netanyahu's already attempting to put this plan into action. Last week, the Israeli prime minister sought to convince European leaders to pressure Egypt into accepting refugees from Gaza. You're already seeing that all over the place now, right? Well, why won't all these other places accept them? Right? That's what you're hearing. This is that. Okay, so according to the Financial Times, diplomats from France, Germany, and the UK, however, dismissed the idea, citing Egypt's strong rejection of the displacement of Palestinians from Gaza. While that avenue failing, Netanyahu is now reportedly proposing to write off a large chunk of Egypt's debt through the World Bank.
Oh, God.
Yeah. World Bank. Everyone's favorite BRICS alternative. So, yeah. To incentivize the country to take in Gaza's population. Now, we've talked about this a bit, at least with Indy. I think I've talked about this, where it's like, it's what is that called, Care Bear, when you send people and like to have money attached, right? You are literally giving them money in the tune of like debt cancellation. What's that called? So like you could literally do the math, right? Which I'm sure we'll get to. That's called, for the kids playing at home, slavery. That's what that's called. Okay? You're just like, here, accept some of our refugees for fucking money.
Right.
So anyway, everything that has been spelled out in this document in terms of the modalities is everything that we're seeing right now. International human rights lawyer Diana Boutou told Mint Press News. The plan's first phase details Israel's aerial bombardment of the northern section of the Gaza Strip and the moving of the population of over 1 million people to the south. The second stage outlines Israel's ground invasion beginning in the north and then taking over the whole region. Okay? So exactly what's been happening?
Right. States
Compressing,
definitely in play right now.
Yeah. Compressing Palestinians to smaller and smaller areas may just be the first of what will ultimately be the fulfillment of these plans on paper. Adam Shapiro. We've heard this Shapiro name come up frequently here of late.
I mean, hopefully not related.
Fucking P word. But, you know, I don't know if there's a relation, Ben, but maybe, I don't know. So you don't call anymore. The controversial intelligence ministry document isn't the only police paper recommending 2.3 million Gazans forcible transfer to Egypt. Collin, what is that called? We've talked about this before. What is that forcible transfer to Egypt? Like, called a war crime? That right there, that's called forcible deportation. That's a war crime, just a war crime. There's one among many being committed in this region right now. Israel security think tank Mizgiv, Mizgav, I would imagine, for the Institute for National Security and Zionist Strategy. Okay. Published a paper written by Mizgav researcher Amir Whiteman on October 17th entitled A Plan for Resettlement and Final Rehabilitation in Egypt of the Entire Population of Gaza. Economic aspects. Whitman is an activist with Netanyahu's Likud party and reportedly a close associate of Intelligence Minister Gila Gamliel. The report calls for Israel to transfer as many Gazans as possible to other countries. Any other alternative, including PA rule, is a strategic failure. Therefore, Gaza's population should be transferred to the Sinai Desert and the displaced absorbed in other countries. Mizgav published a paper on X, formerly known as Twitter. That's because it is Twitter. Along with a tweet outlining the paper's central arguments. The post was deleted following widespread backlash. The original tweet rascally wabbits. The tweet read, "There is currently a unique and rare opportunity to evacuate the entire Gaza Strip in coordination with the Egyptian government. An immediate, realistic, and sustainable plan for the resettlement and humanitarian rehabilitation of the entire Arab population in the Gaza Strip is required, which aligns well with the economic and geopolitical interests of Israel, Egypt, the United States, and guess who, Care Bear? Saudi Arabia."
Saudi.
Yeah. In 2017, it was reported that there are about 10 million vacant housing units in Egypt, of which about half are built and half are under construction. For example, in the two largest satellite cities of Cairo, there's a huge amount of built and empty apartments owned by the government and private parties, and construction areas sufficient to house about 6 million inhabitants. Collin, how many you think are in Cairo houseless right now, if you were to take a guess?
Oh God. I would say 2 million.
But you know what you don't get for housing them? Your debt's paid off.
Right.
Okay. So the average cost of a 3-room apartment with an area of 95 square meters for an average Gazan family consisting of 5.14 people in one of the 2 cities indicated above is $19,000, Care Bear. That's it. $19,000 for a family of how many? You want to round that up? Yeah. 5 people. You know, taking into account the currently known size of the entire population living in the Gaza Strip, which ranges from about 1.4 to approximately 2.2 million people, one can estimate that the total amount required and be transferred to Egypt to finance the project will be on the order of $5 to $8 billion. Injecting an immediate stimulus of such size into the Egyptian economy would provide a tremendous and immediate benefit to al-Sisi's regime. These sums, in retaliation to the Israel economy, are minimal. Investing a few $1 billion, even if it's 20 or 30 billion, to solve this difficult issue is an innovative, cheap, and sustainable solution. Okay? There's no doubt that in order for this plan to be realized, many conditions must exist concurrently. Currently, these conditions are optimal, and it is unclear when another such opportunity will arise, if ever. Miskov subsequently published another paper related to Gaza entitled Hamas Enjoys Widespread Support Among Gaza's Population, written by Miskov fellow Yishai Armani on October 19th. Okay, in this essay, Armani details the considerable support Hamas enjoys from its constituents, writing, despite claims now being made that the majority of the public in Gaza desires peace and is being held captive by Hamas, data and evidence collected over the past 2 decades consistently demonstrates the opposite. Hamas enjoys widespread support among Gaza's civilian population. The paper then concludes that claims regarding the existence of a clear ideological or political demarcation between the majority of Gaza's residents and Hamas are entirely unfounded. Sure they are, guy. While Armani makes clear not to conflate civilians with Hamas militants, he does note that Hamas's popularity among Gaza's residents should be taken into account with regard to decisions related to the military campaign and to post-war arrangements in the Gaza Strip. The Mizgov Institute did not respond to Mint Press News' request for comment on these position papers. Israel legal advisor Itlay Epstein explained on social media how the views outlined in Mizgov's recent documents are already translating into action. According to leaflets airdropped on northern Gaza from the Israel military, anyone who doesn't leave for the south could be considered affiliated with Hamas. Furthermore, yes. Yep. After the exactly. Everyone is Hamas. Don't worry about it. Furthermore, Miskov's executives already appear integral in crafting government legislation. Miskov is headed by former Netanyahu National Security Advisor Meir Ben Shabbat, an influential figure in the Israeli security sphere and one of the architects of Israel's normalization deals with the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco. Miskov is also funded by the Kohelet Policy Forum, now notorious for being behind the current Israeli government's judicial overhaul plans. The Institute's founder and former chairs are also entwined with the Israeli government. Former chairman Yoaz Hendel served as Israel's Minister of Communications. Moshe Alon served as defense minister under Netanyahu. Moshe Aarons also worked as Israel's defense minister and foreign affairs minister. Natan Sharansky served as interior minister and as deputy prime minister. One of the critical points in the intelligence ministry's document stressed the need for harnessing international support for the expulsion plan, something analysts argue Israel's Western allies are already doing. Care Bear. Yeah. On October 20th, the White House sent a $14 billion funding request to Congress for aid to Israel, Gaza, and Ukraine. The letter's language has come under scrutiny for suggesting the forcible displacement of Gazans to other countries. Oh, y'all didn't know that shit was in there, huh? Y'all didn't know about that shit. This is why. Okay?
What did the letter say?
These resources would support displaced and conflict-affected civilians, including Palestinian refugees in Gaza and the West Bank, and to address potential needs of Gazans fleeing to neighboring countries.
Wait, pause.
Yes.
Pause.
Yeah.
Pause.
Yeah.
No, this gives the idea that
remember that
Gazans
Band-Aid?
are leaving on their own accord.
Yes. Remember that Band-Aid? The Band-Aid that they put, remember that, like, oh, we can beat your wife, but, like, we'll put a Band-Aid on it and give her some bottled water for, like, that's,
yeah.
Like, that was this. This was the Band-Aid that they got, but guess what it's tied to, Care Bear? Guess what that aid is tied to? So for you to get the aid, that means you got to do what?
You got to go.
You got to fucking go. Like, so either get the fuck out or die.
Right.
That's what this is.
I'm sorry, this has to be clipped. Honestly, like this should be clipped. This should be all over Twitter, honest.
Yeah.
Because like this just gives more proof like this humanitarian aid
is
that what we're hearing on mainstream is bullshit.
Is fucking bullshit.
It's always the devil. I say it all the time. The devil's
in the fucking details, ain't it? Ain't it fucking in there? Yep.
well, it's worse than what we thought because it's the idea of like, oh, they get the aid, but they will continue to bomb. No, it's like
Mastermind Hour. First, you get the aid,
and they will bomb your ass anyway. But you got to leave anyhow.
Mastermind Hour. First, you get the aid. Then you get the power, and then you get the women. In other words, Collin, cash rules everything around me. Gotta get the money. Dollar bill, y'all. Like, that's literally like they're trying to make him an offer they can't refuse. Like,
well, honestly, like this article, I think that was Crab saying secret plan. This isn't a secret. Like,
yes, but it's
especially if you've been watching. This might be secret to the normies, but like for us who's been kind of watching this, we knew that this kind of shit was going to happen in some way, shape, or form. But I didn't realize how blatant this actually was in terms of, this is kind of this. I think, if anything, this is kind of showing that, like, what we've been thinking is happening a lot sooner than anticipated. I figured they will just kind of continue blowing shit up for an indeterminate amount of time. No, it's like, get out now, like, and go to Egypt.
Yep. Someone said that
we'll bomb you there too.
Ben Sharpie only Twitter account got me suspended, and that hell site, he's Mossad. Collin, do you know what Mossad is? Mossad is a Hebrew word, okay? And we asked them what it meant. Like, could you give us a translation? Right? Do you know what they called it? The Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. Spell that out for me, please. If that's like,
Israeli,
yeah. Secret.
Wait, say the words again. Secret.
Intelligence.
Oh.
Service.
Oh.
Otherwise known as
ISIS.
yes. Yeah, kind of a little bit. Maybe that's why they tried to call it ISIL for a bit. They didn't want it confused. But just saying. I mean, I'm not saying it's a coinky dink, but it is kind of coinky dinky, isn't it? So Don slammed the White House's request language and called on Congress to reject the supplementary funding bill. Okay, but we know how that worked.
Right.
The Biden administration isn't just giving a green light for ethnic cleansing, it's bankrolling it. Sarah Lee Winston, Don's executive director, said in a statement, gaslighting Americans into facilitating long-held Israeli plans to depopulate Gaza under the cover of humanitarian aid is a cruel and grotesque hoax. While the White House requests to acknowledge the possibility of Gazans being expelled during the war, U.S. President Joseph Biden had previously advocated against this forcible displacement. The White House did not respond.
Whatever. He's pussy popped and backtracks on every single thing that he said. So,
yep.
So whatever. Like,
the White House did not respond to Mint Press's news inquiries for comment on the aid bill. Mint Press, when the fuck White House respond to any of your questions, let alone this one in particular? Like, I mean, I feel you, but I feel like, I'm like, I know why you're doing that. That's like, they ain't saying shit. I know they ain't saying shit. They never say shit. The Americans are supporting Israel and creating the conditions on the ground that are catastrophic from a humanitarian perspective, Don Shapiro told Mint Press News. So far, the U.S. has repeatedly rejected calls for a ceasefire in Israel's war on Gaza. However, Biden recently advocated for a pause to secure the release of American captives held by Hamas. The U.S. has also sent senior army officials to advise Israel's military on its ground invasion into Gaza and increased its arms and troops in the Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean regions. This has included shipments of armored jeeps and advanced weaponry to Israel. Footage circulating online has also shown U.S. manufactured weapons containing white phosphorus being used in Israel's assault on Gaza. These artillery shells were made by Pine Bluff Arsenal. Feel free to put that into Google Maps. A chemical weapons manufacturer based in Arkansas, known for supplying white phosphorus ammunition. Guess whose neck of the wood that is, Care Bear? Arkansas. Who you know from Arkansas?
I have no idea.
They've been in power a few times.
Oh, the Clintons, whatever.
Yeah. You think they've made any money on Pine Bluff? You think?
Oh, of course they have.
Okay, probably connected to the Waldens, who are also there. So the majority of the world is opposed to this attack on Gaza, Bhuttu said, but still Western Europe, the United States, and Canada are not. Bhuttu described the U.S. as totally complicit in Israel's displacement of Palestinians in Gaza, saying, this is an Israeli plan that will be signed off on by the Americans, by the Canadians, by Europe, and so on. Israel's policy papers promoting the ethnic cleansing of Gaza simply mirror what many Israeli politicians and media pundits have expressed since the beginning of the war. Member of Israeli Parliament Ariel Chotiner called for repeating the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians during Israel's establishment as a state in 1948 known otherwise as the Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic, except on a much larger scale. I don't know, there's another Jewish word about breaking glass, might be similar. Right now, one goal, Nakba. A Nakba that will overshadow the Nakba of 1948, Calendar wrote on Twitter. Dror Edyar, Israel's former ambassador to Italy, called for the complete destruction of Gaza during a live interview with Italian channel Reti 4. Quattro. For us, there is a purpose to destroy Gaza, to destroy the absolute evil, he said. Absolute evil. Mastermind Hour Crystal Nacht. That would be the German word, I think. But, you know, German Jewish, same diff, right? At least the Nacht part is. As Israel continues carpet bombing Gaza, and as even a sliver of humanitarian aid struggles to trickle into the besieged enclave, another Nakba, or arguably just another chapter in this genocidal series, is rapidly being carried out. So this has just been a continuation since 48, Butu said. It's just a slow drip to get people to leave, and in some cases, not a slow drip, but even a faster one. So, yeah, you just sent me a thing.
Yeah, just what you mentioned several paragraphs ago reminded me of this. This was, I know a couple of other like outlets kind of reported on this back in September, but I know Brett Wilkins, a friend to the show, wrote an article regarding Benjamin. Yeah, I have to find where he was. At the UN General Assembly. This was back in September.
Yeah.
Netanyahu showed this map, which he called the New Middle East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. That's like the Euphrates over to the Nile.
Right. Well, right. So, so basically in that map, we see Israel fully filled in.
Yeah.
So West Bank gone, East Jerusalem gone, Gaza gone.
Yeah.
But then like
all that area in green is from the Euphrates to the Nile. Probably further than.
Yes.
Because if that's Egypt, so the Nile's in the middle of that. So you know.
So that big sliver of that river in between Saudi Arabia and Egypt.
Yeah, that little sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah, no, this is like the this bit. This isn't a river. That's
inside,
like
it's instant within.
Yeah,
Egypt,
it's like in here. It's like from here down.
My geography is bad right now, but
yep.
No, but the idea is that just to eliminate Palestine, but developing relations with all of these countries in the Middle East, which is again where Egypt comes to play in like what you.
Yeah.
So you know, obviously pay off their debt.
Mm-hmm.
If you take our slaves,
right?
Essentially,
yes.
So,
well, I mean, it's like do it what you want with these people. Here's money. Like we're gonna force march them to you.
Right.
So, yeah. Meanwhile, Egyptians who desperately need their own aid and care are going to be ignored.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then Israel will then start blaming Egypt for retaliation against it. And then they'll go after it.
Find a reason to go after it. And yeah.
And then we'll support it with military aid, and you know, then it'll be the Saudis next, and then you know, this is invasion. But yeah. Well, on that note,
yeah, so we definitely need to have a lighter show next week.
We'll try. Even then, it might be a bit like depressing. Sorries. This is like the world. My apologies. If I could fix, I would.
You're going to depress the people the day before Thanksgiving.
It's
great.
okay. They'll get boats. It'll be fine. You know, we'll figure it out. But
well, speaking of, so that's our show. So let's look at our schedule for the remaining of the week.
Yep.
So Nobody Wants to Work Anymore will premiere tomorrow night with Indy and Himbo. Has Tara confirmed for Friday?
This Friday, yes, we have Minar. I have a pre-recorded video with Minar that we're gonna put up. That's Mint Press lady. So good stuff. I think I gotta pull it together still, but
yeah, we tried to.
I'll make it look all pretty.
Like I emailed her. Yeah, I emailed her to see if she would be willing to come on.
Cool.
INN news. So maybe
we can reach out again.
Connect with her to see if she can do that. 7 on Friday. I'm not sure if it's gonna be a misname now, but like we have Angel. Thank you, Anita.
Yep.
Saturday we're good. Sunday.
How do we miss that?
Are you going live?
Oh, he definitely will be.
Sunday?
Yeah.
And that's gonna be your
he missed it last weekend because I told him not to do one. He's like, well, I got stuff, and I'm just like, bro, just you just came back, you know. Give yourself a day. It's gonna be all right. But anyway, and then Politically Homeless Monday.
Well, I would imagine.
Right.
I imagine next week might be a little because it's
weird
Thanksgiving-ish. So,
AKA
subject to change.
Native American Day of Mourning.
Right.
So
maybe we should just do another Thanksgiving special.
Always. There's guys over at Plymouth. Every year they do like a live stream, literally from Plymouth Rock, about like indigenous and particularly freeing. Why does the name escape me? Indian man who's been jailed for like allegedly shooting FBI people on his land.
Oh, I forgot his name.
Yeah, I know. We're terrible with names.
Yeah. Maybe that's what we should do instead of Thanksgiving special.
Yeah.
So,
Leonard Peltier.
There we go.
Yeah, they had one last year in honor of that guy. And I think they will do it again. So keep an eye on the Twitters for that. I'll share it if I see it.
So next week, chances are shows might be subject to change, but assuming maybe Monday, we have Politically Homeless. Jesse will be off next week anyway. Potentially will be on next Wednesday. We'll let you all know. And then after the rest of the week, who knows? So, but we'll let you all know on Twitter at GetIndieNews for any updates regarding shows for next week.
Get some merch. Christmas is coming.
Yes.
Get yourself a bucket hat. Get that bucket hat. You want that bucket hat. Just subliminal messaging as much as possible. Bucket hat.
And he's saying Tara's going to be on TNT with Misty.
Misty next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday.
Okay, cool.
So,
dude, TNT Radio. Killing it. You know, with Misty at least.
That'll be at 5 Eastern if you want to catch that interview with Tara and Misty. I don't know. So, yeah, that's our show tonight.
I think so.
So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for the guys who are tuning in late. We know you're sliding in after watching Dissent, so please feel free to watch the replay at your own time. Also, shout out to Nuno. Also, shout out to Nuno for letting us use to feature your podcast, or at least part of it. So as I said to you guys earlier, make sure, please follow him on Twitter. I'll put his Twitter again in the chat. And also his link to his podcast is in the description. So please check it out. Subscribe to him. He's definitely one that we looked as far as finding or having alternate voices in the space, and he's definitely one of them. And yeah, definitely support him, encourage him, because he says a lot of good shit. We've been following him for a while, and yeah, definitely worth a follow. So
yeah, cool. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, watch another one of our videos. Do all the stuff. Hit the like button. It's nice. Yeah, tune in tomorrow at 10:30 for nobody wants to work anymore. But as always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.